Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, with a mere 20 minutes, I will, with such a historical and important bill being brought to this August chamber, I will not spend much time rebutting. Today, with the debating of the mutilated legislation, marks a very disgraceful and shameful day in Parliament. There has been no consultation whatsoever with stakeholders, as the government has said. It is 6 years that this law has been awaiting regulations and to be full proclamation. As the leader of the opposition has declared, it has been delayed on the part of the PNM. In their last term in office, they did nothing to fully proclaim the Parent Act. In 2010, Madam President, before forming government, the Joint Consultative Commission asked for procurement legislation. It was a Prime Minister by the name of Kamla Prasad Bisesa who delivered that in 2014. And it was under the People's Partnership government that the procurement legislation was brought to Parliament, debated, and passed. And Madam President, 5 years later, under this PNM, no proclamation of the procurement legislation. And all of this, while we see government-to-government deals to buy not one, but 2 fast ferries with no oversight, disposal of state lands and assets in a repo to PNM financiers, no procurement regulator, issuing of billions of dollars in contracts in construction, all done with no procurement regulator. Madam President, 2 Cape-class vessels from Australia, costing the taxpayers of this country $630 million with no oversight. And Madam President, in these last 5 years in this country, not a dog bark, not a feline meow, nobody picket, nobody protest around the savannah, nothing. But that was until last week, Monday, the 4th, when this government surprised the nation and like a thief in the night brought this bill to the Parliament. And the whole nation woke up, Madam President. They woke up at this point. Civil groups woke up. Private sector groups woke up. The coalition called the Private Sector Civil Society Group woke up. And Madam President, within 24 hours, they pulled together their group. And can you imagine the press release sent out from the Private Sector Civil Society Group? But Madam President, let me list the members of this organization so that the PNM cannot come to this house once again and say that the UNC is the only one against this bill. Because, Madam President, the population needs to know the position of business and civil society. We have the right in this Parliament to be the voice of these people. And we will be their voice today. So let me tell you some of the members of the Private Sector Civil Society Group. This media briefing, Madam President, was led by a Mr. Winston Riley, chairman of the Private Sector Civil Society Group. And the members present were the Joint Consultative Commission, AmCham, Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Service Industries, and the Trinidad and Tobago Local Content Chamber. And Madam President, they have said the same things that the opposition has said. They have quoted that the PNM in their manifesto in 2015 promised that they would swiftly move to include the necessary improvements to the Public Procurement Act in order to remove loopholes and limitations that currently exist. However, now history will show that these promises never materialized. So they are living up to their name, Madam President. The PNM promise never materialized. Mr. Winston Riley and team, Madam President, lamented that since the budget was delivered in October 2016, that the Minister of Finance promised that it was the government's intention to operationalize the full public procurement system. By the end of March 2017, Madam President, public bodies were supposed to have procurement personnel. But what we got instead, Madam President, was a failed promise. And now they come to this Parliament with a watered-down piece of legislation to present amendments that will just make the PNM friends and family richer and richer. I mean, we heard the Prime Minister on the TV himself say he had no problem seeing the rich get richer. And all of us in the opposition, we watch the poor eating off the side of the plate. You see, but Madam President, it would interest you to note that since January 2020, the private sector civil society group issued a statement stating that there should be no amendment to Section 2, Section 7, Subsection 2, Act Number 1 of 2015. It should be remembered that both political parties voted for this act in both houses of Parliament in a 3/5 majority. Madam President, now they come to dismiss what was delivered with a special majority by tabling a simple majority bill. Madam President, in mid-November 2020, this year, the public sector civil society group wrote to the Prime Minister privately reminding him that the procurement legislation was promised. Would you believe, Madam President, if I told you that up to this day, on the 8th of December, there has been no response from the Honorable Prime Minister? Imagine the blatant disrespect that the Prime Minister has, who had the time to leave Parliament during the anti-gang debate, claiming that we did not support it, but he himself was not there.
Senator Lyder,
to vote.
Lyder, please confine your remarks to the bill, please. Okay?
Thank you, Madam President. But he has not responded to this private sector group. This private sector group, who is the economic backbone of this country. After the government has crushed the economy of this country, it is this private sector group, this private sector that is holding together this economy like glue. If not for the private sector, this country would completely collapse. The private sector, instead of obtaining confirmation of the procurement law being tabled in its original form, instead they receive a procurement amendment bill that they themselves described as disturbing. The private sector expected the regulations of the Office of the Procurement Regulator to be tabled in the Parliament. But instead they received this bill, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property 2020 on procurement, to be passed by simple majority. Madam President, I must quote Mr. Riley again, where he says that this bill destroys, and I quote, destroys almost completely the efficacy of Act Number 1 of 2020, which sets up two procurement regimes here, Madam President. One under the Office of the Procurement Regulator and the other of the Ministry of Finance. The PNM in 5 years have failed to proclaim fully the Procurement Act, and instead they brought this dangerous amendment. And you know what, Madam President? The worst part of this is that in 5 years, they could not even be bothered to have consultations. Mr. Riley went on to say, and I quote, "This represents a breach of trust and goodwill of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago." He says, Clause 5 of the amendment bill makes a mockery of the procurement process, end quote. This bill provides ultimate powers to the hands of ministers and directors without proper accountability and transparency. Madam President, when we look at Clause 5, Section 7, we see what they have extracted from this bill. It says, this act shall not apply to the following services provided to public bodies or state-controlled enterprises. Here are the 5. Legal services, financial services, accounting and auditing services, medical, and here number 5, or such other services as the minister by order determines. So that means that the minister could wake up any morning and decide, should there be any area that they don't want any public scrutiny, they can just decide to pull this into the bill. They can pull it out, extract it. This means anytime there is a friend, family, or financier who needs the public scrutiny over their procurement process to be removed, they could simply get their friends in the PNM to make the changes to the law to cover their tracks. And Madam President, speaking of tracks, covering tracks, I haven't heard any result that came out of the fake oil investigation. But I will move on. This, Madam President, opens the way for corruption, nepotism, misappropriation, and by and large, Madam President, it takes us towards a dictatorship. Every week, every month, we see ourselves getting closer and closer to Venezuela, to a dictatorship like Venezuela. Because the Prime Minister is getting the power to run this country by decree. The Minister of Finance only has to worry about a negative resolution before a friend, family, or financier of the PNM gets to sail through to acquire or sell any strategic asset. This amendment bill under this PNM government will effectively turn Trinidad and Tobago into a banana republic. Madam President, a banana republic where the Prime Minister can gift away any strategic asset to whoever he decides without the glare of public scrutiny. So it should come as no surprise when individuals get thousands of acres of land with bluestone and yellowstone and gravel, and there was no real procurement process in place. And Madam President, what was very disturbing is that the PNM doesn't worry to hide this anymore, They don't worry to hide this. Look at what they are exempting, Madam President. Legal, financial, accounting, and medical services. The country is not asleep. Who do we know in the cabinet is connected to many of these industries? Who's recused themselves, 90-something times? I'm not sure. But I know the population knows. Madam President, when we look at other projects, government projects, it was a project with a Chinese company with the HGC project with over $70 million just for phase 1. Government to government, Corruption rampant in that case. Even the Prime Minister admitted there were problems in that deal. The government had to pull it back. So we cannot forsake our rights to fairness because of another government elsewhere that might be corrupt or not. You see, Madam President, under the guise of respecting other governments, this government has placed an exemption for government-to-government arrangements. A declared concern of the American Chamber of Commerce was the treatment of government-to-government arrangements. Changes proposed in the amendment before Parliament will essentially gut the efficacy of the Act by removing government-to-government procurement from being covered by the regulation and also international financial institution funding. So, for example, Madam, we see this almost incestuous relationship between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and that of Venezuela with their illegitimate president. Could it be that they can go to the Andean Bank, supported by the Venezuelan regime, and escape the scrutiny in projects that the IDB, for example, would require? This government has effectively created a parallel system for the procurement that will lead to corruption, as it will undermine the independent office of the procurement regulator. Madam President, would you believe if I told you even the office of the procurement regulator is against these amendments? So they're against it. The civil society is against it. And the private sector are against these amendments. They reiterated that there should be no amendments to Section 7. The private sector asked that Section 7 be tested so that local providers can have equal opportunity for local content participation. Madam President, it is indeed a sad day today because the government has seen it necessary to undermine the office of the procurement regulator. The approach of deleting Clause 7.2 and setting up an alternative procurement process removes the issue of transparency, accountability, and thus opening the door for our country being downgraded. What 7.2 does, it makes the process transparent,
Senator Lyder, you have 5 more minutes.
accountable, thank you, Madam President, and value for money. It is also disheartening that putting up dual procurement processes, both operating in tandem, under the office of one under the office of the procurement regulator and the other under the Ministry of Finance, is in contravention with Section 4D of the Constitution, which states, Madam President, the Constitution, the right of the individual to equality of treatment from any public authority in the exercise of any function. So if you want to bid to purchase a state asset and another family member of the PNM official wants to get through with it, well, crap or smoke your pipe. You have no fairness there. You see, Madam President, we even look at the sandals debacle, this thing called the sandal scandal, where this government was prepared to give $700 million of taxpayers' money towards this project, $500 million in land, and another $500 million in tax exemptions. Take our public purse and throw this into this deal. And if it were not for civil society, the private sector, and the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago, they would have gotten away from it with it. In town, tongues are wagging. They say this deal might have been orchestrated over a dinner table, but I don't know. The point is, the deal didn't happen. So, Madam President, for this coalition that I speak of to organize themselves within 24 hours to raise the issue uniformly and collectively illustrates the great import being placed on the systematic risk issues going forward. The national issue received no consultation from the PNM. This is a testament to the fact that elections have consequences. The PNM is not interested in consulting with anyone but friends, family, and financiers. It is a view of the coalition that Section 7.2 should not be amended from the Parent Act. They were hopeful that this government heard their message. And it is clear that the government did not hear the message, did not care to listen to the deep concerns, and have placed a priority of interest of their friends, family, and financiers to the detriment of these institutions. So, Madam President, we respect the fact that the Minister of Finance needs the latitude to maneuver through specific issues, but it does not take away from the clarion call to account for these said actions. It does not augur well for the public trust to simply say, hey, trust me, I good, I gonna make sure everything go well. What is being asked for is public accountability. So hypothetically speaking, Madam President, and I'm breaking it down for the layman on the street, you have a procurement man on one hand, and you have the minister on one hand. Anyone in the cabinet that wants to get through with the multi-million-dollar government project, who you think they're going to for approval? The big bad procurement regulator or their good friend in the cabinet? Whilst all of our public funds jumping up like a steel band in town with no accountability. Madam President, this is outrageous. This is a breach of public trust. This is a lack of transparency and accountability, and it is simply unacceptable, Madam President. The opposition wholeheartedly rejects the bill, just as many of our civil society have rejected this bill. The voice of the people and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have rejected this bill of dictatorship. And we expect the newspaper in this country to report this. We expect the journalists and our fourth estate in the Republic to do the right thing and report it the right way, Madam President. Madam President, as I close, the only thing standing in between the PNM bringing this gutted bill that strangles the constitutional rights of every citizen and veils transparency, accountability of our public funds is this side of the House, Madam President. And today is a most historical day. While the nation looks on at this August chamber, today every single one of us in here needs to reflect today, and we must use our conscience in these decisions. Civil society is looking on. Private sector business is looking on. Our parents are looking on. Our children are looking on. God Almighty is looking on. In your opening prayer, Madam President, you said in your opening prayer, open our eyes to see the truth. Madam President, I ask my colleagues in this chamber, open your eyes today, do the right thing, and unequivocally and unanimously reject this corrupted bill. And I thank you, Madam President.